So, hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Social Z Franchise Happy Hour. I'm the host, Calvin, again coming from my beautiful Winnebago Echo here, somewhere in the middle of nowhere, Arkansas, right now. But I'm very excited to take a few minutes out and talk to Greg Martin, joining us from Washington. Greg, how are you today?
I'm doing okay. Sun's out. I'm happy.
Good, good deal, good deal. Well, I want to hear a lot about your business, Greg, and how you got into franchising. But the first thing I have to ask you is, what is an inspector general in the Air National Guard?
Uh, as an inspector general, we're responsible for um, scheduling all the exercises and inspections within the wing, kind of coordinating that. We kind of oversee the individual units' self inspection programs, and there's it's kind of like all the programs that they do quality control on. We're kind of gauging, making sure they're capturing the right metrics, and we also have a an aspect where we take any kind of complaints and help resolve those conflicts that they might have. So we kind of have that little HR branch, and we also have the exercise and inspections branch.
Awesome, awesome. So, doing the sleuthing on LinkedIn, Greg, it looks like you are what going on 20 something years in the Air National Guard, and you joined that after studying meteorology at Penn State. Is that right?
Right. I studied meteorology at Penn State, got my degree in '01. Then I went active duty for 14 years, was laid off in Manning cuts. People are like,
Oh
oh, you
wow,
can't, how do you get laid off in the military? It happens. It's just called reduction in
sure,
force. They don't call it layoff.
sure.
So I just say that phraseology so people understand it wasn't my choice to get
Yep,
out. Um,
yep.
but I kind of did some soul searching and kind of looked around for a couple opportunities, and that's kind of when I stumbled on the Anytime Fitness franchise. Consulted with some friends who had started one, and it seemed like a good route to go. When I came out here looking for a real estate that I could lease after I had already purchased my territory, I kind of chose this area because I had in mind that I would want to rejoin and work in the National Guard while doing this franchise, and I still wanted to get my 20.
Sure,
So I've been in the Guard now
sure.
probably about 4 years, give or take, and
Hmm.
it's been going pretty good. It's obviously it gets stretched a little thin when you have two gym locations and a full time Air National Guard job. So
Sure,
it happens.
sure,
Yeah.
sure. So that's a good segue, Greg, into how you got into franchising. So you were coming off active duty. What made you decide to go out and start a business, and particularly a franchise, versus obviously with your background, you probably could have secured a corporate job pretty easily. What took you to the route of being a franchisee?
So I looked around at some jobs, and in that kind of position, you got the freedom to pretty much go anywhere. And I kind of looked around the job boards, but back in 2015, I think things in business were going pretty well. So there didn't seem to be a lot of solid opportunities for me. I applied for a few kind of like headhunter uh, through some headhunters looking for some jobs. But weather is kind of a niche degree. It isn't always the easiest to translate into the civilian world, even if you had a lot of business and leadership kind of background like I have. It's kind of hard to some for some employers to realize. That's why a lot of headhunters go after the junior officers versus a more seasoned officer like myself. They kind of target you at 8 to 10 years, not 14, 15 years, because by the 14, 15 year point, you're kind of they they see you as the most potential and uh, I'd say translatability into the civilian world is kind of gone, if you will. So that they're harder to place people that are 15 years, give or take, and they also expect a higher salary. So the value isn't there for the company, so they don't really go looking for people like me. But after I interviewed a few places and I was asking some friends, what they might suggest, they've done the transition before. And one guy said, "Oh, you should open up a Subway. I hear they're like personal ATMs." Ha ha ha. And I said, "That's pretty funny." but I don't want to go into food service. But the idea of going into my own business was intriguing because, if the government can't take care of me, like give me the pension that I expected, how can I expect anywhere in corporate America to do? That's a 50s, 60s, 1970s phenomena to retire with a pension. So I really couldn't expect that of any companies nowadays. So I thought, well, maybe I should get into business for myself and kind of build something. And if I can continue to serve in the guard or something, that's great. If not, well, at least I'll be making my own way. So that's kind of been my thought to going into business for myself.
Sure, absolutely. So once you made that decision, Greg, and decided, hey, I'm going to open my own business. I'm not going to do food service. What was the path that took you to the the fitness industry, and how did you land on Anytime Fitness specifically?
Well, so I being in the military for so long, you do end up getting some knowledge with physical fitness. Um, Whether it was to help me or to help somebody else, there was still that foundation there. And then even when I was assigned at one of my duty stations in Illinois, I went to the gym every day, but I kept having these issues of trying to find the right equipment that I wanted to use, and it was always packed. During the busy times, the place was always packed. So I ended up having a membership at another Anytime Fitness down the street. So I became familiar with the model that way. Um, I kind of understood a little bit more, and the gym was impressive. It was nice. It was aesthetically pleasing. It wasn't just some rundown place. Of course, all that has some cost to it, so that will come to bite me a little bit later. but but for Anytime Fitness, their rankings had a lot of sway in my decision to go with Anytime Fitness versus some other franchise. Being rated so highly for so long, like I think they were number one for like 12 years in a row at that point. And they just kept growing. So the reciprocity aspect of having an Anytime membership was appealing to me too, because if you join one, you're a member of them all, and that led to the maximum size customer base in my mind at that time.
Sure, sure. A lot of the people we talk to, Greg, when they're buying a franchise, some like yourself were familiar with the brand, and some ended up just working with recruiters. It sounds like you knew the industry you wanted to go into. You were familiar with the brand, and so you just reached out to Anytime Fitness, directly. What was that process like from the time you reached out to them to finding a location to signing the contract? How long did that take, and was there ever a point where like you're like, hey, this may not be for me, or was it a pretty smooth process?
So my journey was a little different. Um, First of all, one of the bigger factors for Anytime is that I didn't want a job that would it would chain me to the desk. I didn't want to have to be there every day of the week to help people sign up. So if I was in another gym franchise, they didn't have the 24-hour access. I'd have to be there, unlock it, let them in, blah blah blah. They'd have shortened hours, et cetera, et cetera. So in my mind, going with Anytime, it was real easy because I'm like, oh, they can get in 24/7. It's easy. It's great. Um, Not totally the case because you still have people that want to sign up, people that want to cancel, still have billing issues. You still got to market it, so you still have those business hours that people expect a person to be there all the time. So in my mind, it was a little misplaced confidence in the 24/7 aspect of it. But the
Sure,
journey for
sure.
me was after my friend gave me a little bit of insight into it. I went on their webpage, said become a franchisee, clicked on the link, kind of gave my initial info. From there, it was kind of like, okay, they'll send you the franchise disclosure documents. You can look it over, kind of figure out if you even qualify in your own mind based on what they expect. Like there weren't really a lot of liquidity requirements or anything like that, but they do have the costs kind of set out for you so you know what to expect when you're starting a new location. So looking at that, I'm like, okay, well, this could work. And I'm looking at the numbers. I'm like, if I have this and this and this, then I'll be making about that. So that shouldn't be so bad. Um, so once basically they didn't really help me establish my location. I said, well, this is where I want. So I wanted my territory. So easy, sign on the dotted line, you get your territory. Okay, well, I wasn't familiar with the East Washington because I'm from Maryland. So I had to come out here and kind of scout for real estate. And when I came out here, I'm like, well, this is great because it's like 4.5 miles from Fairchild. It's it's an up and coming area. Airway Heights is incredible as far as the growth that they've realized over the last 5 years. Problem was when I got here, there's nowhere to rent. There's nothing gym sized anywhere near Airway Heights. A couple places that were slated to be built, and that looked pretty good. And then it was just kind of playing the waiting game and waiting for the builder to get back to me and be like, "Hey, when can we get this started? Like, what's the deal? Let's go." So after the realization is, oh, we're not going to start building for another 8 months, 9 months, 10 months. It kept kicking the can down the road a little bit. I thought, well, maybe it would be better if I bought an existing location and kind of turn that one around. And then by the time I have that place safe, solid, I can, develop the territory that I already bought. So when I got here, part of my scouting trip was hitting the other anytimes. That's when I found out one on the north side was for sale. And so after a couple months of looking that one over, I decided to pull the trigger, and that's the one I have in Spokane. And bought that one. And it's funny because my friend in Texas that owns one, and I'm rabbit trailing a little bit, but he said, it's been really easy for him because he got his first loan. He's retired Air Force. He got his first loan, built that one up, and within 6 or 8 months, he was already applying for a second loan for another location. I'm like, dang, man, that's great. So the bank had no problem. When I got this one, I knew it was going to be a little bit of a turnaround project. Um, However, that calculation kind of really put me in a bad spot because it was a little worse off than I expected. A little bit more of a turnaround than I expected. And so it put my personal financials in a weaker spot. So when the bank looked at me, they're like, oh, well, we can't give you a loan on this. Well, that's, not what I really expected to hear based on my friend's, what his experience in Texas just recently. So they looked at it, the bank looked at it, the builder looked at it because I was working on a build to suite location down there in Airway, and it kind of the whole strategy got delayed by 3 years. It took me 3 years, 8 banks, and a credit union before I finally got a loan for the second location. And I came into the industry I think a little bit overconfident and a little naive and a little less conservative than I would normally when you're risking your retirement savings. So, uh, all said and done, it did take me about 4 years to finally open up my second location, and that's in Coeur d'Alene. So, unfortunately, I live kind of in the middle. So it's about half an hour to each location, 40 minutes to Coeur d'Alene, about a half an hour up north, and then 12 minutes to work. So it's doing okay, but the turnaround never really turned around. It's just kind of treading water. I got out of the hole, but then COVID kind of kicked me back into it. So we're all just recovering on the fitness industry side, I think.
Absolutely, absolutely. Greg, you mentioned coming in, maybe overconfident. A lot of the people we talk to, are surprised about things they're not good at it. Business owners in general, but how much of that you think was coming out of the military and having built a career and obviously had your own leadership style and things like that, and confidence in that part. How much of that overconfidence was just the translation to civilian life, and how much of it was translation to, hey, now I'm a business owner?
I think a lot of it had to do with the weaknesses of that first location were pretty evident. I was like, oh well, if I get new cardio equipment in place, if I get some classes going, and I bring in the hubbub and get some advertising going, it'll bring the people there. But that's not really. It didn't do it, and I to to simplify things, I still in the back of my mind, haven't got the marketing piece figured out up there because maybe it's just a saturation of different competitors. Seems to be a lot of fitness in that area of Spokane, so it's maybe there's just too many options for people, so they're going to go with something with a pool instead of a smaller fitness center like me. And I get that. I can't understand the people that sign up to my place and then they bash me in the reviews because I don't have a pool. I'm like, well, you knew what we had when you signed up here. What?
Sure,
I don't
sure.
understand that part, but um,
Yeah,
so I'd say there's a fair bit of confidence because of military. Because by most metrics, my career was pretty solid. I was achieving some things while I was in the military. I was just a victim of bad retention report writing. So my boss just didn't take care of me in the end of the day, and so I got plus 17 of my coworkers in that particular unit got the walking papers. So um, it was pretty evident. But you know, if you have X number of years of success, you're probably going to have a little bit of confidence level going into that. And when it was so clear what I thought this gym needed, to me, it would have been hard to sway me saying, "Oh, maybe it's going to be a little harder to turn it around. It's a lot of work." And I worked there 2 years almost every day while waiting for a position in the guard. So it's not like I didn't have my hands in it and I was an absentee owner. Like I was there cleaning the bathrooms for an hour before opening every day, and I usually stayed until the last person. After an hour after closing, I was putting in full days. So, uh, you know, the effort. It's not that the effort wasn't there, but I guess I just don't know what resonates with the consumer in that particular area versus what doesn't. And I've tried a lot of different marketing over the years. I've tried probably 30, 40 grand of marketing, and I think I've gotten traceable 2 memberships out of it. That's a awful rate of return. I've tried SEO companies, local publications, uh, a few radio spots, which they didn't even cost me anything. I just donated something for an auction, and I got the radio spots for free, and even that didn't translate into anything. It's like, what else should I be doing here? All the social media, SEO. Who knows?
sure. You after the 4 years of working and turning that around, Greg, what did you learn on that, and how has that trial and those challenges helped you with the second location, and are you having more luck with the second location, and what's the plan going forward? Are those two kind of it for you, or are you looking at additional opportunities, or what's next for the Anytime Fitness front?
I think I'm content with the 2 locations. When I first started, I had a grand vision of 9 or 10, and I was going to take over Spokane and go out east into Montana a little bit, and maybe a little bit north from there. And then after that, it's just like staffing is such a pain, especially post COVID era. Finding good people. I've gone through probably 40 people in the last 4 or 5 years, and it's just finding people that are motivated to really grow and have a passion to help there and not just sit in a chair. It's really hard to do. Um, and so, I mean, when I find those people, I'm definitely inclined to take care of them. Like our one manager now is awesome. Nothing but great things to say about him. And I'm going to do whatever I can to keep him on board as long as I can. Also, qualified trainers has been a really thorn in my side too, because I know that if you get a group, a personal training division going, and you can get a lot of business that way, yeah, it can grow your top line a bunch. But finding a good motivated trainer, I mean, again, the motivation level, they just want to sit back and wait for you to send clients their way. And I've actually had a trainer that say, "Well, there's no training here." Well, you're sitting in the office. You got to get out on the floor. What? This is not difficult stuff. So that probably staffing and getting good people in there has been one of the harder parts of the turnaround. As far as the future, Coeur d'Alene's got a good foundation. I think we got a really good trainer in there. I think we'll be able to start really building on that, especially now that the weather's getting nice. Winter's always a little dismal. She just came on in like October, late October, early November, and so we've been kind of stuck inside. So we're gonna be looking forward to expanding out into the parks that are local and kind of doing some nice workouts out there and really being able to get the ground, uh, get word on the street, if you will, of the local area, and like let people know that we got a fresh, brand new facility. It's gorgeous. Everyone says it's a great spot, good location. We just got to get more people in the door.
Absolutely. Greg, you mentioned going back and joining the Air National Guard now. What does your time look like, and how has owning the business positively or negatively impacted your just quality of life at this point? Obviously, being in the military takes a lot of time as well, but from that standpoint, do you feel like going into business for yourself has been helpful and you have more time, or is it just sucking all your time and it's more than a full-time job?
So this is where that staffing piece comes in again. The more confidence I have in my staff, the more time I can have. But if I have to micromanage, which I hate doing, and again, it's another half an hour north. So if base is just to my west, if I had to leave there and go to my first location, go to my second location, I wouldn't be home until 9, 10 at night. So having good staff in place is vital to me being able to take a breather. There have been some times when it's a little rough. I'm not here to blow any kind of rainbows up people's butt to say it's all going to be great. Um, it has affected home life a little bit. When I was involved with someone and she was saying, "Well, why? I don't understand why you have to get home so late." I'm like, "Because I had to stop at the gym." And I'm not even really working. I'm just, you got to drop off supplies or double check things, make sure everything's all good. And if I did need to log in and do something, every little task takes a little bit of time, especially when you talk about, you know, maintaining and fixing equipment or TV boxes and cables. It's been a nightmare too, but those are the kind of things that just little stuff adds up. So, uh, yeah, it's been I've been stretched in the past a lot, especially with the military job. During COVID, the gyms were shut down, but I was full up and then some with COVID. So I was traveling to the west side of the state every couple of weeks. I was on the road constantly. I think we did about 40,000 miles in the span of 14 months, just driving around to different food bank locations in Washington. So, um, it was good for me, kept me busy. Not good for the gym. They were shut down anyway, so a lot of things were in turmoil. If my parents weren't up here, I would have been in a lot of trouble. So I was able to rely on them. They carried a bulk of the burden for both locations while we were trying to hire new staff and get everything back to a steady place.
Absolutely. Greg, I think one of the, you know, indicators of success over the long run for any business owner is, resilience and being able to get through hard times. And it sounds like with your situation of opening, the not so favorable location first, plus going right into COVID, if you're able to make it out of that, surely the long run is going to be nothing but upside. You would think so. Something to look forward to there. The last question for you, Greg. For anyone looking to get into franchising, particularly the fitness game, maybe anytime fitness, or anyone coming out of the military to look at purchasing a franchise, what would be the things that you would tell them to look for, to kind of keep in mind, or from a due diligence standpoint, what would be the advice that you would give them in a quick conversation?
In a quick conversation, like I don't have a general rule or anything, but my first thing would be like you take your worst case scenario and then make it 20% worse. So, like, just prepare yourself for that. Like, what will your game plan be? And then really think about how much time and effort are you really willing to put into this? Because if it's not something that you're going to be all in with, you know, if you get distracted with too many different projects, none of them will be successful. So, just, prepare for the worst and then make sure it's worse than the worst than you're thinking. And then, just have a solid game plan and try and find the right people to help you through it from the get-go. Because if you have to wait till you're in a hard spot to find those people, then you're going to be wasting more time trying to train them up and making sure they understand everything, because it's going to be a while before you can let them on their own. Our manager up north was there for over a year by the time we were like, all right, we'll give you the rights to the billing so that you can handle that stuff too. Here's your promotion.
Yeah, it's good advice. It's, everyone wants to talk about as you said, the sunshine and rainbows, but the reality is, most of our time as business owners is spent, solving the things that people don't want to spend their time on, right? And being able to do that effectively and efficiently is really what dictates success. But Greg, we want to be respectful of your time. We're already 5 minutes past our 20-minute mark, but we appreciate you taking the time to join us. Anyone that's taken the time to listen to Greg's story, thanks for joining us.